Have you ever, found yourself kind of shifting how you speak or even just how you carry yourself, maybe depending on who you're with?
Oh, definitely, like in different settings.
Exactly. Maybe you choose different words for a job interview.
Right.
Or adjust your posture in a really formal meeting.
It makes sense.
Yeah,
It's a pretty common thing to do.
it is. But for many Black Americans, this isn't just some casual adjustment. It's often described as a deep-seated, almost automatic survival strategy. It's called code switching.
Right.
And today, that's what we're doing a deep dive into. This really complex practice, specifically looking at its impact, its profound impact on Black Americans. We want to look beyond the apparent advantages and really try to uncover the hidden costs, the ones that are often overlooked but are pretty significant.
Yeah.
So our mission today is to unpack the nuanced reality of it all. We're drawing from a recent article, The Hidden Costs of Code Switching for Black Americans, just published June 27, 2025.
And it's a crucial conversation to have.
Yeah.
Because code switching, well, fundamentally, it's this linguistic and social thing, right?
Right.
Where individuals change their language, maybe their dialect, or even just their behavior to fit into different cultural contexts.
How does it actually look, though?
Well, it can show up in lots of ways. Changes in speech patterns, for sure. Maybe the idioms you use. Or even more subtle stuff like body language.
Okay.
And on the surface, you can see why people do it. It
Yeah.
serves some real purposes, offers these like immediate gains sometimes.
So jazz.
Well, it can help mitigate racial bias, unfortunately. It can make social interactions smoother, maybe create a sense of belonging, particularly in predominantly white spaces.
Like work or school?
Exactly. Workplaces, educational institutions. And this adaptability. In the short term, it might help someone get a job, build professional relationships, keep things harmonious,
Yeah, I can see that.
But, and this is what the article really digs into, while it offers these advantages, it also points to something deeper. This persistent need for people to navigate their identity in places that might even subtly perpetuate systemic racism.
That's fascinating. So, okay, let's unpack this a bit more then.
Yeah.
Because when you really look into it, the article is very clear that even with those seeming benefits, it's not simple at all.
Not at all.
It mentions this dual nature, almost like there's this hidden burden. So let's pull back that curtain now on those less obvious drawbacks, because they really do seem to carry a significant weight.
They absolutely do. And one of the biggest but often unnoticed costs, it's the chronic stress, the mental health strain it causes.
How so?
Well, just imagine constantly having to monitor yourself, like always being aware, caught between who you really are and the version you feel you have to present.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. This kind of duality, it leads to this pervasive chronic stress, a real weight of anxiety. And the article brings up a critical concept here, racial battle fatigue.
Racial battle fatigue. What's that exactly?
It's not just being tired. It describes the cumulative emotional toll, the buildup of dealing with everyday racial microaggressions.
Those little comments or actions.
Exactly. Those subtle, maybe unintentional, but still harmful slights. Dealing with those, plus stereotypes, social invalidations, day after day, it adds up.
I see.
And suppressing your authentic identity to navigate that, it forces you into this constant state of vigilance, which, naturally leads to heightened stress levels.
Yeah.
The source gives an example, like a young professional feeling completely drained after a meeting, just wiped out from keeping up this facade, politeness, compliance.
While inside feeling totally different.
Totally alienated from their true self. And it's not just mental, this constant shifting. It's this insidious burden that builds up over time. It erodes well-being.
Leading to?
Well, chronic anxiety, depression, and alarmingly, the article notes, it can even affect physical health long-term.
Wow. Okay, so it's not just about feeling tired after work, it's much deeper.
Much deeper.
And what really struck me there was how that constant performance, it doesn't just sap your energy. It seems to hit your very sense of self.
Precisely. It starts to chip away at something really fundamental.
Yeah.
Your authentic identity.
Right. The article talks about how shifting between these cultural personas creates this dissonance. Is that the right word?
Dissonance, yeah.
A conflict.
Yeah.
And it can really undermine self-esteem. It can even lead to feelings of shame about your own Black identity.
Shame.
How? Well, think about the pressure, maybe unspoken, to downplay cultural markers, things like how you speak naturally or your style of dress, maybe in professional settings.
Just to seem acceptable.
Exactly. To fit in, to be seen as acceptable. And doing that over and over, it doesn't just make you feel like you don't belong, it can actually create a fractured self-concept.
Like being split in two.
Kind of. And that fractured self, it inevitably impacts your personal relationships too. It can build barriers to like genuine connection because you're constantly holding parts of yourself back.
Leading to isolation. Yeah. Feelings of isolation, definitely. Because you're guarding so much of who you really are.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the societal level.
Yeah, what's fascinating in a troubling way is how code switching, just by existing, kind of subtly reinforces certain norms, specifically white supremacist norms within society and institutions.
How does that work?
Well, the article points out this pervasive idea, often unspoken, that white cultural expressions and behaviors are just more valid or more acceptable, the default almost.
Okay.
So the pressure on Black Americans to change aspects of their authentic selves implicitly suggests that their own natural ways of communicating their cultural expressions are somehow inferior.
That's a heavy implication.
It really is. It fundamentally undermines the authenticity of Black identity. And then you see the structural impacts.
Like in hiring.
Exactly. Hiring, promotions, processes might maybe unintentionally favor people who demonstrate they can easily align with these dominant white cultural norms.
Which just keeps the cycle going.
Precisely. It perpetuates systemic inequalities. So the whole societal narrative kind of quietly benefits those who conform to the existing power dynamics.
And all that conforming, that constant adapting and filtering you mentioned, that requires effort.
A huge amount of effort. And it's often invisible labor.
Invisible labor. Explain that.
It's all the emotional and cognitive work that goes into code switching, the constant monitoring, the filtering. It's exhausting, but it often goes completely unrecognized by colleagues or bosses.
So you're doing this extra work nobody sees.
Exactly. And it leaves people feeling drained, disconnected from their authentic selves. The psychological toll is immense. You might feel this deep anxiety or frustration just from the sheer effort of constantly adjusting your language, your behavior to fit into these predominantly white environments.
It sounds like another layer of stress on top of everything else.
It absolutely is. And the cumulative effect of all this emotional labor, it can definitely hinder performance, lower morale, and crucially, it can lead to missed opportunities for advancement.
Because maybe you're too drained to push for that promotion or
because the environment itself, which demands this labor, is also one where microaggressions thrive, leaving people feeling consistently undervalued anyway.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? About all the unseen struggles people might be facing.
Every single day, just to feel accepted in certain spaces.
Yeah.
And if we take that idea a step further, this whole practice of code switching, it has real implications for creativity, for innovation, especially at work.
How so? Less diversity of thought.
Essentially, yes.
No.
When people feel they constantly have to adapt to the dominant culture, it can lead them to dilute their authentic thoughts, their unique perspectives.
Holding back the really different ideas.
Exactly. The very perspectives that often spark genuine innovation. The article gives a really good example. Think of a researcher, maybe in tech, who's Black in a mostly white company.
Okay.
They might hesitate or just avoid sharing innovative ideas that come directly from their cultural experiences. Why? Because they might fear those ideas won't land well, won't resonate with colleagues.
So they self-censor.
Right. And in that self-censorship, it stifles the flow of diverse ideas. It limits the whole team's creativity, their ability to solve problems effectively.
Because diversity leads to better solutions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The source makes that point clearly. Diversity drives innovation. Code switching, in effect, actively gets in the way of that.
And maybe the most, heartbreaking part of this is how it gets passed down.
Yeah, the intergenerational aspect is really tough. Code switching is often something Black parents teach their kids, explicitly or implicitly.
As a survival tool.
As a vital strategy for surviving, for navigating predominantly white spaces. But teaching that, learning that, it carries a heavy emotional toll right from a young age.
How does it affect kids?
It can foster this deep sense of disconnection from their own cultural identity. Kids learn, subtly or not so subtly, that their authentic selves might not be fully okay, not entirely welcome everywhere.
That's devastating.
It can lead to feelings of inadequacy, even internalized racism. It essentially sets up this cycle of intergenerational trauma.
Where kids learn their culture is something to hide or negotiate.
Exactly. Something to be negotiated rather than just embraced and celebrated. And this, unsurprisingly, contributes to mental health challenges. anxiety, depression, especially for younger generations trying to figure out who they are.
So when you put it all together,
Hmm.
the short-term gains versus these long-term costs.
Yeah, when you really weigh them, a pretty profound imbalance starts to show. We talked about the immediate advantages, right?
Enhanced communication, networking, acceptance.
Right. Things that can lead to promotions, social inclusion, real benefits, no doubt.
Nice.
But the practice comes with these really significant long-term costs. Costs that the article argues often far outweigh those short-term wins.
Like the psychological toll.
Huge. Constantly altering your authentic self leads to feelings of alienation, diminished self-worth. That internal conflict can show up as chronic stress, anxiety, depression.
And even physical health issues, you said.
And even physical health issues over time, yeah.
Yeah.
Detrimental effects. And beyond the individual, remember the expectation to code switch, it perpetuates systemic inequities.
How?
By subtly implying that Black Americans must change their behavior to fit a narrow dominant standard just to be accepted. And that fundamentally hinders genuine diversity, real inclusivity.
Okay, so pulling this all together, what does it mean for us as individuals, as a society?
Yeah, what's the takeaway?
Well, the core challenge seems clear. Code switching, while it's often felt as a necessary strategy for Black Americans in white-dominated spaces,
Yeah.
it just comes with these deep, hidden costs, costs that really weigh on identity, on mental well-being.
So what's the solution?
The article really emphasizes shifting the burden. We need to move towards embracing authenticity and collectively confronting the societal dynamics that make code switching feel necessary in the first place. Meaning, organizations, for example, have a massive role. They need to actively build cultures of acceptance, where diversity isn't just, tolerated or acknowledged, but actually celebrated in its full, authentic form.
That sounds like hard work.
It is. It means really looking at and dismantling the existing biases, the subtle ways Black voices and experiences get marginalized, creating places where people don't feel they have to perform just to belong.
And that raises an important question for everyone, doesn't it? Not just organizations.
Absolutely.
The source highlights that allies, advocates. We all need to play an active role, supporting policies that genuinely promote diversity and inclusion, committing to continuous education about these kinds of nuances.
Because it benefits everyone in the end.
Totally. Embracing authenticity, it doesn't just empower individuals, it makes communities and workplaces fundamentally richer. It drives innovation, collaboration. The article ends beautifully, actually.
House.
It says, ultimately, the journey towards a more inclusive society requires collective action and ongoing dialogue. It talks about dismantling the social constructs that force people to alter their identities.
Paving the way for a better future.
Exactly. Pave the way for a future that honors and respects the unique contributions of Black Americans, and that embracing authenticity leads to a richer, more equitable society for all.
That's a powerful thought to end on.
It really is. And maybe a challenge for you listening right now. Think about your own environments, work, social life, whatever.
Yeah.
How might those spaces maybe inadvertently be making others feel like they need to code switch? And what concrete steps, even small ones, could you take to help foster spaces where people's true selves are welcomed, valued, embraced without reservation?